Welcome to the True Man Podcast. This is an invitation to radical reconstruction of a man's masculine heart and soul in a place of safe community where we dare to ask questions deep seated inside a man and explore ways to help you become a better man, a better son, a better dad, and a better spouse. Well, thank you for being with me again today here on the True Man Podcast. Hey, got some great news to share with you. So, as we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, we had a small little hiccup in the book. You can no longer find it on Amazon, but why should we give those rascals my business when they don't care about small business owners, right? So, we have found a fix. No worries, no problem. Here's all you need to do. If you'd like to get your hands on my latest book, True Man, True Ways, a roadmap of discovery to the masculine heart, just go out to my website, go to books. You'll see that right there in the heading, and you'll find it right there on the website. You just click on the link, it'll take you right out there, and you can order that sucker. Quick, easy, painless. All I need to do now when somebody says, hey, well, where do I get my book? Just go out to my website, truemanlifecoaching.com. See, that's way easier than going to Amazon, isn't it? And so I hope you'll go out and grab that book. We're going to talk a little bit today about something that was in that book, as I talk about a topic. What is it that they say that we're all going to have to deal with death and taxes in our life at some particular point. We just got through tax season, and so but how do you deal with with death? How do you deal with saying goodbye? Do you wait till the end, or do you live it out? Do you live your life now to the fullest and say what it is that needs to be said to the people around you? Well, as this podcast begins and is released, I am preparing to head back home, back to Iowa, and the place where I grew up for a funeral of a friend's father. Now, death has a way of hitting the brakes on life, right? And forcing us to take a hard look at how we're living. Maybe start thinking about our legacy and all the things that we want to be remembered for. But it made me start thinking about, of course, how do we live in the present so that we don't end up with sadness, anger, or regret, or all that other garbage when someone we love is gone because we didn't take care of things when they were here. So when I wrote my book, True Man, True Ways, a roadmap of discovery to the masculine heart, I included a quote in there and talked a little bit about some of this subject matter. So, in fact, the quote came from a book called The Four Things That Matter Most by Ira Byock. And in it, Byock says, when people come to the end of their lives, there are four simple statements that they often have. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. And I love you. Four of the most common statements at the end of life. Simple words, right? But what if they're left unsaid? That can become a real heavy burden and a grief that we carry around. What if we didn't wait until the deathbed of a loved one to say them? What if we lived them out every single day? Well, let's talk a little bit about that and how you can build a life that doesn't need a deathbed confession. Let's talk about living with more conviction, more meaning, and more gratitude right now. So let's talk about the phrase, please forgive me. Please forgive me requires two things, really, that most men, well, we don't always do well, right? Humility and honesty. It's admitting sometimes that, hey, man, I screwed up. I didn't get it right. It's laying down your pride. It's choosing relationship over your own ego. Now, keep in mind that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's, in fact, a strength. And it's in the strength to say, you matter more to me than my reputation, that you find that strength. Now, in John chapter 13, the night before he was crucified, Jesus took a towel and washed his disciples' feet, including Judas, the man who would betray him. And he knew this. Jesus had no sin to apologize for, yet he humbled himself to be this great servant. Now, if the Son of God can kneel and wash the dirty feet of people that betrayed him, of cowards, what's stopping us from humbling ourselves before our family, our friends, or even our enemies? Now, I know a man, we'll call him Tom. Tom had a falling out with his brother years ago over money. How often does that happen? Neither one of them wanted to budge, right? And years went by. Holidays skipped, weddings missed. Then Tom's brother got sick, very sick. Now, Tom finally swallowed his pride. He showed up at the hospital and said, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And his brother's eyes just filled with tears. They hugged. And 2 weeks later, his brother passed away. But Tom does not carry regret, he carries peace because that relationship was mended. What's the lesson here? Don't wait. When you know you've hurt someone, no matter how small, go to them and say the words, live humble and live honest. I forgive you. I forgive you is just as powerful, maybe more, because let's be real, people will wound you, sometimes deeply. And it feels easier, even right, to carry that grudge like a shield. But carrying unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And Jesus taught us differently. On the cross, beaten, bloodied, and mocked, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In Luke chapter 23, verse 24. He forgave while he was still bleeding before anyone apologized. Now, I once coached a man named Eric who had been abandoned by his father. 30 years later, the wound still owned him. He blamed it for his drinking, his anger, and his broken relationships. And in one of our conversations, I challenged him, forgive him. Not because he deserves it, because you deserve to be free of this feeling, of this mess that you're carrying around. Now, it took time, but Eric did, and he forgave his father face to face. Eric said it felt like someone took a 100-pound weight off his chest. He became a better husband, a better father, a better man because he let go. How would you like to experience that? And what's the lesson here? Well, bitterness chains you down. It's like an anchor. Forgiveness, well, that sets you free. You don't want to wait until the end. Forgive now. And how about this phrase, thank you? Thank you is the most underrated weapon we have in life. And if you're like me, we're not hearing enough thank yous these days. But gratitude transforms everything. It takes what you have and makes it enough. It keeps you from becoming the angry old man who always feels like life ripped him off. Jesus lived gratitude over and over again, and scripture shows him giving thanks before feeding the 5,000, before raising Lazarus, before breaking bread at the Last Supper. He thanked his Father even when the road ahead was brutal. So there's a woman I know named Melissa. She had lost her husband young, raised 3 kids alone, battled cancer, and still walks around smiling. And when I ask her how she stays so joyful she always says the same thing. Every day, I find three things to thank God for. That's it, man. Gratitude every single day. What's the lesson? Say thank you more often to God, to your wife, to your kids, to your coworkers, to the cashier at the grocery store. Be the man who lives grateful, not the man who dies regretful. And finally, I love you. Men struggle with these words more than any other, I think. Some of us were raised to believe love is soft or feminine, right? Not the masculine thing to do. That's nonsense. Love is the guttiest thing to do, the grittiest thing a man can do. You know, Jesus loved loudly. He wept over his friends. He called his disciples beloved. He bled out on the cross because God so loved the world. Now, I had a good friend tell me this story about his grandfather, a tough old school farmer, calloused hands, few words, a man of few words, but every time he left the house, he hugged his grandson and said, I love you, buddy. He never missed an opportunity. Even when cancer took his voice in the end, he'd mouth it because he understood something that a lot of men miss. Real strength is measured by how freely you love. What's the lesson here? Don't assume people know. Tell them, show them, and love them boldly. Now, how do we live this way? If you want to live without regrets, and I hope you do, you have to live intentionally. So, how do we start that? Well, you need to examine your heart. Ask yourself questions like, who have you hurt? Who's hurt you? Where are you withholding gratitude or love? And then take quick action. Don't sit on apologies. Don't stew in anger. Don't postpone gratitude. And by gosh, don't hold back love. 3, live like Christ. Serve even when you're tired. Forgive even when it's undeserved. Give thanks even when it's hard. And love even when it costs you. Man, this is masculine living. Let me share with you one last story. A man named Jack worked a blue collar job his whole life. Hard hat, lunch pail, calloused hands. We love calloused hands. That means you're working. He provided for his family, loved his wife, raised 2 boys, right? Jack wasn't much of a talker. He showed love by fixing things, showing up at ball games, working overtime so his wife could stay home. Do you know this guy? Right? One night, Jack collapsed in his living room. He had a heart attack. The family rushed him to the hospital, but he was alive, but fading fast with those tubes, those wires, those machines hooked to his body. Now, his oldest son, Dan, broke down. Through tears, he whispered to his unconscious father, Dad, I'm sorry for every time that I disrespected you. I forgive you for the times you were too tired to talk. Thank you for always being there, even when I didn't appreciate it. I love you. Jack squeezed his son's hands, and moments later, Jack passed. Now, of course, Dan carries grief. Who wouldn't? But he doesn't carry regret because he said what mattered while it still mattered. Now, that is how you live a life without regret. Now, Jesus didn't wait until his final breath to love, to forgive, to serve, or to express gratitude. He lived it every step of the way, the ultimate true man, right? He forgave sinners as he healed them. He loved his disciples openly. He thanked his Father continually. He lived humbly, even washing the feet of men who would abandon him. And when he said, "It is finished" on the cross, he didn't just mean his suffering was over. He meant he had completed the work of living and loving to the fullest. That's the mark. That's the blueprint. Not to wait until the end to make everything right, but to live fully every day, every conversation, every moment. We should strive for this because none of us know. None of us know when our last words will be. So let's make sure they're not filled with regret. Let's make sure they're not just an echo of a life well lived. Forgive quickly, forgive fully, thank often, love boldly. That, my friends, is the true man way. And that's a life worth living. I want to thank you for today, listening today. Now go out and live what we just talked about. This is heavy stuff. I know. I get it. But each one of us are going to experience death in our lives. And you don't want to wait until the end to forgive, to love, and just to get on with life and be present. Very important information to think about and discern and to take into consideration. And I think when a death occurs close to us, it really makes us think about these things. And that's important. You should think about these things. Now, if you have any questions or you want to talk about what you heard on the show today, no worries. I would love to hear from you. Just send an email to mike@truemanlifecoaching.com or head out to my website at truemanlifecoaching.com where you will find my calendar link. It's all over my website. I don't think you can miss it. I don't think you can. I challenge you to miss my calendar on my website. But hey, listen, again, yeah, this is heavy stuff. Of course it is. No fun to lose a loved one. But it's important that we make peace while we can and not wait until the end. So let's go out and live today because, as I'm sure you know, we are not promised tomorrow. And I want to thank you for listening. And if you're listening to this on your mobile phone right now, hey, I would just feel absolutely blessed and humbled if you could forward this podcast on to a friend. Help me grow the show, man by man, person by person. Thanks for listening. Thanks for showing up, and go out and make this your very best day ever. God bless. Thank you for listening.